Hello, everyone. This is Brian Hall at Servicesorg Alliance. Thank you for joining us for best practices of campus recruitment and Servicesorg fairs. We're going to start 1 minute early because I see that a lot of people have come on who we saw joining in and getting their audio connected. As we go along through the presentation, please use the chat and question and answer functions. If you have any questions or anything pops up, we'll be taking those throughout the presentation and definitely at the end of the presentation. But if you have type in questions during the presentation, know that we'll eventually get to them, and we might just not answer them right away. If I see that is pertinent to the conversation that we're having at the moment, I will take them as they come. So I just wanted to say welcome, thank you, and also thank our presenter at Servicesorg Alliance, Sheila, who I'm going to allow to introduce herself. But she has been, along with another colleague of mine at Servicesorg Alliance, really doing the campus recruitment work, and she has really helped gather these best practices together from all her work across the United States. I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Aguilar-Sekehidi. I am one of the regional field managers here at Servicesorg Alliance. That is a lovely photo of me back in 2014 when I was serving in AmeriCorps and CCC Team Corps. That picture is based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, if we have any Iowa representation on the phone. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to listen to this webinar, and please, I encourage you to ask any questions for follow-up in that chat box that Brian had mentioned.
Great. Well, thank you, Sheila. We'll hear a little bit more from Sheila in a few seconds, but I just wanted to give, everybody on the phone an opportunity to know who we are, Servicesorg Alliance. Most of you know who we are, but just want to say we're trying to make a year of service a common expectation and opportunity for all young Americans. And how we do that is really through partnerships and the strategy of these 4 things below, and really connecting Servicesorg programs and core members and communities all together to do this work. So we have the platform Servicesorg.org, where we bring programs and potential core members together to find opportunities in an easy, digestible way, and also through interest. We have national awareness recruitment campaigns and a lot of core member support that we roll out. We also help programs as they kind of look to improve their existing programs or create new ones. And then we also have a way of doing policy and on-ground advocacy throughout the United States, all in service to, again, making a year of service a common expectation and opportunity for all young Americans. So if you want to know more about us, this is the first time you're hearing us and somebody sent you this webinar link to sign up, you can go to aboutservicesorg.org. With that, I'm going to switch things over to Sheila as we go through all her findings in these best practice guides.
Great. Thank you, Brian. So to kick off this webinar, I wanted to give a little bit of background. Why did we create this best practice guide on campus recruitment and Servicesorg fairs? Where did these spur from? What are our hopes? And how can they be used moving forward? These guides will cover basics of campus recruitment, from understanding who might be the best departments on campus or in a community to do first outreach to, all the way to how a Servicesorg fair can benefit Servicesorg programs as a whole. We really wanted to narrow in on how to elevate national service when we're talking about engagement. And part of this came out of a cohort that Brian had helped to facilitate in his unit of service-based education programs, really feeling like they needed a space in which they could have resources focusing on college and higher education institution engagement. In both guides, there are email templates, checklists, tips and tricks, and helpful action steps on how to be successful recruiting and setting up events. These guides were mostly written with the programs in mind, but can be relevant information for universities, commissions, and individuals, which I know we have all represented on this webinar today. I just want to add like a little side note. These are living documents, and so we want to make sure we are updating them with the most relevant information for the field to be useful. And I've already seen a couple of things that I want to make sure I'm updating, and I want you all to feel like you can contribute to that and feel like your institutional knowledge about this work, if you have any that you want to contribute, is welcome and encouraged. Okay, we're going to start off with the Servicesorg Campus Recruitment Guide. This is what the front cover looks like. So if you go on the resource hub, for those of you that are members, can identify it with this page, front cover page. All right, getting started. When first starting on a campus, if you don't already hold a relationship with staff, faculty, or even a student, your best route is through cold outreach. I know it sounds scary, but if you are targeted in your outreach through working with a specific department on campus like Career Services, Office of Student Engagement, or even service-centered student groups on campus, for example, APO, which is Alpha Phi Omega, that is a service-focused student group, you'll have a much easier time getting a targeted response back to your outreach. Sometimes it's really easy to email or call a large number of staff on campus, but I would also consider starting with a specific department or major, again, just reiterating that. Consider signing up for free tools on Handshake or OrgSync. These are platforms that universities use pretty heavily for their communication with employers or programs. And use email templates. Save yourself the time or energy. Don't reinvent the wheel. Email templates are going to be your best friend when doing bulk outreach. If you plug and send names, well, it'll help save time in doing outreach to multiple universities or even individuals on a specific campus. I would also consider reaching out to small universities. I know there's a tendency to want to reach out to bigger schools because they have a larger number of students, and there's more potential to reach, you know, a mass audience. But small universities tend to have, are less inundated with outside requests and may be able to provide more meaningful student engagement because they have those close relationships with their students. Here is an example of an email template for initial outreach. I wanted to provide you all an example just because I think it makes it easier to know what a structure is. We have your name, of course, an intro of your position and the program mission, which is really important in being able to connect to the university and the value add. In the body, it gives a pitch for what makes your program or service here important to prioritize for students, their students, making that sales pitch to say, hey, you should take time to really pay attention to what I have to say because this is going to be beneficial for your students in the long term. And make it personal with the university's name. Try and find a specific connection, whether that if they host an AmeriCorps program currently or in the past, name that. You know, make it sound like you've done your research. And then make the hard ask. When are you free? When can we meet? Can we have a phone call? All right, connecting with students. These are going to be strategies that help build your brand on campus. Once you've established a relationship on campus, work with your point of contact to develop a presence digitally or even in person. And we'll get into that part a little bit deeper into the webinar, but having both is really essential. The more engagement opportunities you have, the more likely you are to reach the students who are right for your program. It's important to remember that students are exposed to a lot of noise, so breaking through should be one of your top concerns, and especially when we're thinking about big universities versus small universities. Strategies for campus recruitment. There are multiple strategies that you can take. These are just a few that we have identified in practice in the field, and we'll just go through them. The first is tabling. It's a great way to break onto campus. although you'll see an asterisk right next to that, and if you look at the bottom of the page, while this is a great way to break onto campus, it doesn't always yield the highest return, but is great for visibility, so just be aware. In the same vein, information sessions. They, are great to connecting with students, having a conversation, or in a small setting, or even being able to reach a large number, like through a classroom. And that would be one of my helpful hints, is to get buy-in from professors to either give extra credit to their students, so integrating that service learning that we really want, as well as even asking to present directly into their lectures, where you can then pass around a sign-up sheet afterwards or answer questions as part of their class for that day. Again, there's an asterisk. It doesn't always yield the highest return, but a good visibility opportunity. There's networking socials, which is creating a space for students and programs to interact on a more personal level. This is taking a more formal approach to engagement. It's inviting a select group of young people to network and meet face-to-face with programs in a smaller setting than a fair. Then we've got the traditional alumni and service year program panels. These are always really fun. I tend to get a really high number of individuals that come out to these events because they want to hear the stories of service alums. They want to be able to make that tangible connection from how this applies to their studies or their aspirations into real life and the career projection afterwards. And then last but not least is service year fairs, which as part of this webinar, we'll get into more details later, but this is a way to connect with a large number of students looking for post-graduation opportunities and specifically, post-graduation opportunities that don't fall in line with a traditional full-time paid position. I also want to recommend partnering. Just one last thing on that previous slide. We don't have to go back, though. But recommending partnering with one or more programs in the area to host one or multiple types of these outreach strategies. There is definitely power in numbers, and we'll continue to reinforce that throughout the presentation. Other strategies are digital outreach. As I mentioned before, it's important to have both. We want to take a more holistic approach in our engagement with students and campuses. Hosting webinars like this one, where you're introducing students to your program, invite them from either a singular school or cast a wider net, like school approach, even through a national scale, depending on how many relationships you hold with universities across the country or within your community. Email blast and newsletter, work with your point of contact to target specific audiences on campus. For example, we have found college seniors are an effective group to reach out to because they are looking for those post-graduation opportunities. Social media, now more and more social media is becoming an integrated part of our work. More people are finding their news that way. They're engaging with programs and job opportunities, each other through our social media outlets, and really using those to our benefit by creating flyers and language that is tailored to social media engagement, as well as job boards I mentioned earlier, OrgSync and Handshake. These are platforms that some universities exclusively use for their job and internship opportunities and most often are 100% free, and would highly recommend creating an account on there. There are thousands of universities that you can reach out to through those job boards, and a great way to elevate your program and the opportunities that you have available, as well as websites. And there'll be an example of what I mean on the next slide. Universities have websites where they list opportunities similar to Handshake, but also where they explain what the opportunities they have, like a gap year page or a career page. School websites are a great way to have a consistent presence with your university or college partner. Ask your campus point of contact if your program can be featured on a main landing page or even alongside other service-focused organizations on campus. And on the next slide, we'll cover an example from University of Iowa. I would like to just give one pro tip that we found, which will hopefully benefit you in the long run, is that URL tracking is essential. All links to your website, through email, posts on social media, or displayed on a website that are registering traffic and students to an application should be trackable. Without knowing your highest amount of traffic, without knowing where your highest amount of traffic comes from, it's really difficult to learn about the strategies that work best for your organization and the types of potential service your core members you'd like to recruit. So consider using UTM tracking codes in conjunction with Google Analytics, which is free and is very well documented online. In the guide, we've actually, in the appendix, provided a blog post and a how-to guide on how to create those links and integrate them into your current digital outreach. Great, and this is an example of a website highlight. We partnered with the University of Iowa in Coralville, Iowa. They were very kind and provided us 2 features on the same page. We were doing a marketing partnership with the Iowa Commission around recruitment, and that Iowa service year page that's highlighted on the top right corner of the page directs students directly to Iowa-based service year programs, whereas the second on the center of the page is our national website that focuses on all service years across the country. And these are permanent links and a great way for students to know consistently where to find service information. All right, we are trekking right on through to our service year fair guide. And just to make a note, campus recruitment and the service year fair guide, they kind of go hand in hand, which is why we're presenting them together. A lot of these strategies are cross-functional and cross-situational, and one may work well in one instance and the other in a different. And so I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that these do complement one another. Service year fairs are a great way to connect with students who are looking for alternative pathways post-college graduation or considering a gap year. And as we know, service years and gap years are kind of synonymous terms. Many service year programs have detailed the difficulties of recruiting in a space where they have to compete with higher wage employers, like that of Wells Fargo, Booz Allen, and Deloitte. And so by organizing a service year fair or even designating a specific space within a career fair for service year programs, students are more likely to learn of the professional, personal, and financial benefits of doing a year of service. So why is it important to do a service year fair? As I mentioned, there's less competition with higher wage employers. There's more direct interaction with young people interested in serving. Young people can interact directly with those service year programs and discover what those alternative career pathways are, as well as higher education institutions have an opportunity to create stronger community partnerships with the service year programs that are working in and around the university. As well as they provide local service year programs with an opportunity to partner and raise awareness together. There is that term, a rising tide lifts all boats. A movement can start with one but cannot be sustained, and there's really strength in working together and building a coalition. These are very broad overviews of types of fairs that we have either hosted, participated in, or seen and heard about. I wanted to keep it nice and simple. So we have a single school fair. That means that it's just one school or entity that is hosting for a specific closed audience. So, for example, we hosted a fair at Tulane University. It was only for Tulane University students to participate in. You go out to multi-school, which there are examples in Nashville, Tennessee, and New Orleans is a massive one where they rent out the Superdome, and it's all of the universities from across the city that come together, and they create this career fair in support of each other's, and all of the students from across the city can come to that fair. And then you have a citywide fair, which is generally held through a governing body, like the Department of Employment Services, Mayor's Office, State Commissioner, CNCF State Office. There was a citywide fair a few months back in the spring out of Philadelphia that was hosted, I believe, through the Mayor's Office, and that's just an example that reaches further than the students. It taps into the citizens of the city with disengaged populations like opportunity youth or students that have graduated from college but not yet found their career pathway. Great. This is the beginning of thinking how to create and start a fair. In the similar vein of campus recruitment of where you start, you have to identify your key stakeholders. Who are your partners going to be, and what are the programs that should be in attendance? I would really like to highlight, and I think I've already said this a couple of times, we want to really be holistic on the programs and partnerships that we build, so highlighting the diversity of programs that exist within your community or within direct relation to your community or driving distance is really important. Students know the top 3 programs, Peace Corps, Teach for America, and City Year, and those are all incredibly great programs, and we definitely want students to know about them. But if you are, a student and you don't want to do education or you don't want to go abroad, we want to provide them other opportunities in education to still engage in a service year. We also want to keep constant communication. Communication is key to success. Keeping the commission informed if you are working with the state commission because they can help you connect to other programs, and sending regular emails to your partners. What are the details? What kind of logistics need to be run? What are the ins and outs of making sure that everybody has all the information they need prior to the event? My recommendation would be, once you have all of those logistics set, to send the programs that are coming to the event and even student outreach 2 weeks prior to the event, 1 week prior, and then the day before, just to make sure that you're hitting those milestone timeframes to keep it top of mind. It's also important to set your budget in the very beginning. Determining your budget and the budget of your partner is really important. Can you split the cost? Can one group take on more responsibility or budget than the other? Can something be provided free? And it's important to be honest and transparent. Be clear about what your limitations are, because you don't want to get to the end of this and realize that somebody owes a lot of money and relationships are spoiled as a result. Once you have determined your date and your budget, decide and how many programs you want to invite, decide a location. Think about, what does this space physically look like? How are you going to set up the tables, considering how many programs and students you've invited to attend? Should it be in an urban area, somewhere that's easily accessible via public transportation? And also think of who your partners are, and can one of them host at either free or low cost? What connections do they have to facilities that can provide services for the fair? And make sure the space fits the type of fair you want, whether it's a tabling event, networking, social, or even a larger multi-city, multi-school or citywide fair. Another pro tip is to consider locations that may not charge for use of the event space, including universities, parks, libraries, and even community centers. Ask about any charges for technology and cleanup, as well to avoid hidden fees. That's happened before. Sometimes cleaners have to stay after the event to make sure all the tables and chairs are put away, and there's an additional fee incurred by the university or the facility that has to be covered, and you don't want to have that surprise charge. Great. Outreach. On campus, when we're talking about our campus fair, work with a specific academic department to identify majors closely tied to your program's focus. That will hopefully yield the highest return. If there are programs that you want to highlight, attach it with those majors. For instance, if you have a science science-based program or a public health-based program, reach out to those departments on campus, show that there's value add for these students to come. Again, work with those student service groups, use strategies from the recruitment guide of presenting in classrooms about the event, create paper flyers and post those on campus, create fun, eye-catching flyers that can be on campus or even be posted to social media. Use those emails and newsletters, depending on your budget, ads in local campus papers. There's usually a higher reader number for campus papers, and then tabling, even though it may not yield a high return, it's going to yield high traffic potentially on the space that you're going to be tabling in, which will advertise your event. When you're thinking about the community and working with the community, reach out to local community centers, high schools, trade schools, and youth groups. Also consider working with the city departments like the Mayor's Office and Office of Employment Services. They tend to work with a lot of youth and have a lot of youth-focused programs, either between the ages of, high school and up, and even young adults. All right, when you're getting to the fair, it's the morning of. Make sure you have a table set up for registration, but even before that, I have attended a couple of fairs that have been really beneficial for the programs attending the fair later in the day. You have a round table, you have a morning session where you're bringing in community partners to talk about the work that they're doing, how they connect to one another, have a guest speaker, provide them coffee and maybe some snacks. It's a great way to make everybody feel like they're connected to one another because they are working in the same community. We do want to build those community partnerships, not just with the programs together, but also the host facility, whether that be the city or the university. When you set up your registration table, make sure that there's a spot for students and for programs, and consider what the date structure is going to look like. Add an extra element to your fair by hosting that morning session, bring together participants, and really provide that holistic opportunity. Provide additional information materials when they're checking in. Students might not know what a service year is when they're walking into the fair. Provide them a map of the program, so where the programs are physically laid out within the location, and then a bio of each program. 1 or 2 sentences will probably do, and give them an informational 101 of a service year. There is a service year checklist integrated into the guide, and I would highly recommend checking that out. It's just helpful to know what to check off at each stage of the process. My tip on this slide is to have an FAQ. Be honest and ready to answer any and all questions from students and the university. Like I said, there's going to be a big information gap potentially by students and the university staff, and you just want to be prepared for that. Also be honest. Service years are hard. There are days where you wake up and you're like, man, this is a rough one. And students want to know what they're getting into, and I would highly recommend letting them know the truth. It's not going to scare them off, I promise. All right, the fair afterwards. Debrief with your programs and the staff. That is so important. However you want to do it, I think debrief is essential in order to know what's successful, what needs to be improved upon in the next year. Either do it in person immediately after with a phone call or even through an email survey. Think about what went well, what could have gone better, and what were expectations versus reality. In the follow-up email, make sure you include a thank you note, a debrief on any notes that were taken, next steps, and general dates to block out for next year. It's also important to send a follow-up to students as a reminder of the programs that attended, because either students didn't get to go to all of the tables, they ran out of time, or they just straight couldn't attend. And make sure that you're connecting them to the program website or the program's page on servicesorg if they are a member. All right, we're getting close to the end, and so I want to make sure that we're addressing any barriers and challenges.
This is Brian. I just wanted to say, somebody said it's really key not only reaching out to students and all those, but the student groups associated with those students on the university. So to your point of identifying departments, identifying which of those student groups are attached to those departments as well, and going and giving a presentation on your program.
Absolutely. I would definitely reinforce that. I think reaching all corners of the university is essential in getting a high number of students to come out, and also reinforcing what a service year is, because if you reach all corners, they're going to continuously hear these words and start to learn more. That's a great flag. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the barriers and challenges, because all of this is to say these are great things to do in a utopic world. It'd be great if all of this worked out the way that we have displayed it, but there are definitely barriers that I would like to address, because they are hardships that I have experienced in this work over the last 2 years. You are going to run into limited resources, and these come from any direction. Either you have limited resources, other programs, or your partners. Oftentimes, I find that higher ed institutions are very interested in connecting their students to more service year opportunities, but have either little support from the college, or they just don't know where to even start. And that can make it difficult to host larger events like a service year fair, or even a smaller event like an information session, because they don't want to prioritize this because there's still a base knowledge that we have not taken the time to address. You're going to run into a lot of no information to limited information or knowledge on what even a service year is. So I really say that information and education, or that education and awareness gap is there and needs to be acknowledged, and should be the first order of business when we break onto a campus. Service years are hard, and again, be honest about the challenges that potential core members are going to face in the application and even their
Hello, everyone. We are back. Sorry about losing audio. Sheila is going to start over with bullet 4 of connecting with other programs.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Sorry about that. With connecting with other programs, it's really important to make sure you're doing that, but also acknowledge that sometimes there are barriers within even connecting to one another, either due to capacity because the programs are too small, timelines if they're in the middle of their recruitment phase and they don't have time, or in the middle of training, and possibly even feeling that sense of competition. This is why I've honed in on this idea of building coalitions. Service years, while we have different missions and different focuses, we're all working towards a common cause to have young people serve in these programs, and we want to make sure that we're uplifting that continuously instead of fighting against one another. There's a lot that can be said for working together. As well as breaking onto a school can be difficult. It's really important to be persistent. If you get an email ignored, it's probably not because somebody doesn't care about what you have to say, but it's because either they're getting a ton of requests, they're limited in their own capacity as well to answer emails because they're just getting inundated, or they don't understand what ask you're making of them. I would just reinforce to continuously reach out, either show up on campus in person, send more emails, or even a phone call, and go about it that way. For all types of events, there will be last-minute no-shows. Don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged if not as many students show up to the school or to the event that you want, or individuals show up. Don't get discouraged if programs don't show or somebody doesn't pull the weight that they had said they would. It is a matter of life, and some people's personal lives interfere, and it is what it is. It can't be avoided. And I would say, you know, the event is still going to be successful because you got to that point, so keep on going. All right. And if there's anything that you don't remember from this entire presentation, there are 5 things that I'm hoping you can take away from this. Find your target audience would be number 1. Think about who you want to reach out to and the value add that it gives to your organization and that specific audience, and hone in on that language and really make sure that you're being specific and targeted. Don't reinvent the wheel. If a university or another partner is already doing a service year fair, they already have a strong recruitment strategy around service year programs, talk to them, work with them, partner with them. Programs like Teach for America, City Year, and Peace Corps are so well known because they have recruiters on campus who are doing the exact work that we're talking about in this webinar. It is a huge benefit to really partner with them, identify those individuals, and work with the university in coalition with that. Be on campus as much as possible. Have your face known. Host service days with the university. Make sure that the students know your name and staff members know who your program is or your programs. Use your alumni. I can't say this enough. As an alum myself, as someone whose primary job is to work with alums, they are an incredible resource, not just because of the stories that they have, but because they live and work in the communities that you're directly trying to engage, and can be a great resource to connect. And build those coalitions of programs and community partners.
Great, and I just wanted to add there's a comment on here about finding your target, and I think this is a great thing, is they mentioned that they talk about what they offer, the potential core members, and then also those audiences. The example here was, Lutheran Volunteer Corps, they really are inclusive of LGBTQ, and they make that known to students and how their application process is. So knowing what the demographics that you're trying to go and target, and being transparent to the students that this is, your process is for these things to bring them in through the fold. So really, it goes hand in hand with what you're saying, is really target what you're trying to get out of this and the audience that you want on the campus.
Absolutely.
And also the same LVC is asking if, this is great, could we, try to coordinate, and I think this is something that we can't answer on this phone call, but can Service Year Alliance be a convener of getting some of these service year fairs on a website so that, programs can see across the United States, where these are happening, what programs are doing which fairs, because, it's really, I think this is a great opportunity. I want to, before we do the last couple of slides, Sheila and a colleague, really went across the campuses the last 2 years. These are coming from learnings, working with many programs like yourselves, trying to try different things, seeing what our best practice is, learning from that, going to the debrief, lots of debriefs to see what is working, what isn't, and trying to replicate that moving forward. And these guides really come out of that. But there are things, moving forward, as you said, these are living documents. So if you guys have suggestions, after this we will debrief, sending out a debrief email with this recording, with these resources, and Sheila will be on that email too, so you can reach out to her directly to, mention some of these other things that could be additive to all of this. So just want to say, all those things are coming, and really great comments. If you have any questions or comments, we're towards the end of our webinar here. We're a little ahead of time, but please put them in the question and answer or the chat box. But really wanted to kind of go on to the next one about serviceyear.org, and we have where these resources are as well.
Yeah. As I mentioned, sometimes understanding what a service year is, let alone how to find one, it can be really confusing and daunting task for young people. A simple internet search can lead to fake programs or ones you have to pay for, or even collecting a long list of opportunities with no real way of comparing them. I know I personally experienced that when I was looking for my service year. And so serviceyear.org is a way of addressing this challenge by connecting young people eager to serve with tens of thousands of service year opportunities across the country. It helps match candidates to service years based with their preferences and their qualifications. It's also allowing them to search all listed service year opportunities to find their right match. Servicesorg is also a two-way marketplace, which means that it benefits both sides. Not only can young people or people search for your program, you can also identify individuals and recommend them for your opportunities. And so members of Servicesorg can take full advantage of the recruitment toolkit, which goes into more detail of how to do this on Servicesorg, as well as our other guides and toolkits that can be found on the Resource Hub. If you sign up today on Servicesorg, you can really discover the full benefits that we provide for members at Servicesorg Alliance.
Great, and also wanted to end before the, please enter your question and answers, where these resources reside. So in January, Servicesorg Alliance launched the Servicesorg Resource Hub, where we've been putting many of the resources that we are collating as we learn things together with programs across the United States, and in all this work, and as we hear from programs and do the work, it's at resources.servicesorg.org. We have mentioned a couple of times through this presentation, the Campus Recruitment Guide and the Servicesorg Fair Guide are membership premiums for being members of Servicesorg Alliance. Most programs who have a registration and positions on servicesorg.org are members of Servicesorg Alliance, but it does have a different login than servicesorg.org, and so we have sent out a lot of those login requests, but a lot of people still haven't either logged in or maybe lost that email or went to spam. So if you have not set up that login but want access to resources at servicesorg.org, we have the email address, which is resources@servicesorg.org. And right now, the reason that we have different login is just we're piloting to make sure that this is the right platform for us before we spend a lot of time and effort integrating in servicesorg.org, which is the ultimate vision, but just really want to test out to make sure it's right for us and for the field and for everybody to get information. So does have a separate login. Please email us if you do not have your login for that. And so these resources, as we do the debrief, you'll see we will reference back to the Resource Hub so you can access them. And with that, we have question and answer. So I'm going to look through some of the chat and some of the Q&A. But is there, Sheila, as I look through the questions, what I kind of heard the beat of, which is it seems like there's a lot of time up front just like cold calling to find, if you don't have a relationship on campus, like finding, you just have to do that. Like that's just kind of like the known barrier to doing campus recruitment. But besides that, like, is there any other, like, you went through the barriers and the 5 tips, but are there any, like, things that are also, like, you have to do this no matter what on any campus that is in the guide, just as a review,
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that being on campus is one of the best ways that you're going to be able to connect with people. Digital outreach is great, and it's a great way to reach a mass number, but service years are one of those things, unfortunately, that is intangible, and because it's not widely talked about yet, we have to have a physical presence in order for people to have those conversations and really take this intangible thing and make it tangible, understand how it translates into their real life. And that's difficult for programs because if you're not based next to a town or a university, or a town that has a university or just a university in your area, it takes time and resources. But I will say if you can dedicate somebody to be there once or twice a semester, do a day event, work on a service project where the university provides transportation, that will take your program a long way.
Great, and also, what I've heard as you've done some of this work across the United States is that these service year fairs, it's a really great way, I think what we've heard from programs is like, oh, the quality fit for my program might be a quality fit for somebody else, or, you know, I'm not getting the quality fit, but it might be this person. In doing a fair, you can really do that in real time. Like, you could be a collective together who know each other's program a little bit. You might be talking to a potential core member. It's like, you're not fit for our program, but you're probably a fit for the one across. And have you seen, like, that's a benefit of doing these fairs with multiple programs together and multiple people, kind of like you're able to do that in real time and do those fits?
100%. You know, some schools call it different than a service year fair. It's a volunteer fair. It's a you know, community fair, specific engagement. So it all holds different names, but they're all service year fairs. But what I think, in one shape or form of another, what I think is really specific about having a service year fair is that it's only service year programs. It's not episodic volunteering. And that's really important in the audience that shows up to that, because you know there's automatic buy-in from the students of wanting to learn, at least learn more about what this long-term volunteer opportunity is, and that way, you know, you can better navigate what kind of student fits your program best. And I do think that there is something to be said about taking, you know, somebody you're talking to and saying, hey, I think you're better for that program, because maybe in the future that student will be, well, you know, I wasn't a good fit for this program at that time, but they sent me over here, and now I actually think I am a good fit for that program in the future. And you're providing information sharing and an opportunity for young people to discover what pathway fits them. You don't want somebody serving in your program that isn't a 100% good fit for you, because that's where attrition comes from. And to mitigate that, you know, we want to support each other in connecting the best fit for each other.
Awesome. Yeah, and one other thing that LVC has mentioned here on the side, which you mentioned in here, and I think is part of the guides, is a part of program spiel is really using alumni and also talking about that longer career path. So not only the service, but like what did they do afterwards, and showing that whole range. You know, is that something that you've seen as you've done this work too, that bolsters a lot more kind of engagement as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Alums are, I mean, I truly believe we don't use our alums enough, and that's something that we as an organization are continuously working to address. And I empower programs to work alongside us in doing that, because they are your best resource. They can show up to events when you can't. They can talk about your program and other programs when you and others can't. They can really connect the dots of, this is where I was at this point in my life when I was, you know, lost and graduating from college, or thinking about taking, you know, time off. I did this program. This is what happened during my year, and this is where I am now. And those are steps that young people are looking for. You know, think about when you were graduating from school or going through a huge transition in your life, and you had no idea where you were going next. Mentors are extremely helpful, and that's what our alums can be in shepherding them into our programs.
And then seeing what's after that. And
then seeing what's after, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's that long term that is what young people want to know, is how is this going to affect me in the future?
Great. Well, I'm going to give a few more minutes to see question and answers. These have all been great. And I'm going to promote 2 upcoming webinars that Service Year Alliance is doing, and see if we get any more question and answers. The first one is on September 18th. This is in partnership with the American Youth Policy Forum. We're pulling together a panel to do the role of national service in improving K-12 education outcomes. Really, this is we're trying to show different audiences that service can be a strategy for, in the classroom, in and out of the classroom. That includes after school, in some of the outcomes that school systems are looking to overcome. So service as a strategy for those challenges. And that link to register that is on AYPF's website, but you can go to about.serviceyear.org/webinars, and there's links from our website to register for that. And then a week after, on September 26th, we are going to have the power of storytelling. Our movement building team and many of our team members go across the United States and give a webinar or kind of a a training on how to tell your story to alums, core members, and programs. And we thought, why not do that in webinar form so we can get a wider reach? And so we're going to be doing the presentation that we do, knowing that stories are the ones that bring people in and ties for either recruitment or as core members are doing their service, how they can blog and be communicative during their service. So that is on September 26th, and that registration is also on about.servicesorg.org/webinars. Well, I don't see any more question and answers. I want to thank Sheila for today's webinar and all the work that she did over the last 2 years to pull this together and to put these campus guides, the recruitment guide and the Service Year Fair guides together. Again, you will receive a debrief email that will have the recording from this. Sheila will be CC'd on it and access to the reference guides. And that way you can connect with her directly if you have questions or want to follow up. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We really love seeing all of you and hearing all of you. These are all great comments and questions. And again, if you have any more, you can always reach out to us and through the debrief email that will be coming. And we hope to see you at future webinars. Thank you for today and have a great one.
Thank you.